I think enough time has passed and we can finally talk about Yabani and the absolute tragedy the second season was. So, hello and welcome to Talk About Drama, where we talk about what's hot and what's not in the drama world. I think it's pretty fair to open with Yabani since it's the show that has essentially pushed me over the edge and actually led me to start this podcast. I know it's a little bit late to talk about it, but I think I've been absolutely dreading watching the finale episode. And it turns out it was not in vain, so advance apologies for the pronunciation because I'm not a Turkish speaker, but so for context, I have been actively watching Turkish drama. So not really a beginner watcher, but I haven't been regular as of late, especially since after what happened with Aşk Mantık Intikam. So I was pretty skeptical when starting Yabani because it was by the same channel, but I knew Halit from Gizli Sakli and Kardeşlerim. Sorry for the pronunciation. But the ratings were good, and so I thought, like, why not? And the first episode kind of blew me away because I wasn't expecting anything. Like, it's a or it's a Now show. And I've had really bad experiences with that channel, so it genuinely blew me away. I remember binging the first 4 or so episodes in one go. And then I was just watching it live from the next episode onwards. It wasn't because the story was like groundbreaking or unique, but it was so beautifully presented. Like, I remember reading an interview with Hilal Yildiz, the story's creator, and how the writer's room planned a whole series arc for the first 7 or so episodes. So it was really fast-paced and essentially no frills, which I actually totally agree with because every episode was essentially a mini-movie where you're introduced to characters, you essentially understand their motives and give way to future subplots as well. And it was really well written, like tight storytelling. And just like overall, you had no place where you stopped and thought like, why am I watching this? Because the plots kept coming and the cliffhangers at the end of every episode. And it's essentially, like, as you can see, as you can hear, it's essentially what got me super attached to the series. And then came season 2. You know, to be fair, I'm actually grateful to season 2 for existing because, especially after, like, I've seen all the original ending script leaks, so it's not like I'm here to just bash it because it is the reason why we were able to meet the characters for another 13 or so episodes. So it's not like I'm not I don't really want to like bash it, but it did leave a lot to be desired. And, you know, as good as the first season was, the decline was already visible in the second half. So it's not entirely the second season's fault. But my God, did they take the original concept and flip it into something completely different. So let's talk about it a little bit, I guess. You know, otherwise, why would you opt for a main mafia plot for the second season when you have Neslihan's illness right there? Like, not only did they take everything from the original story, but they essentially took away the screen time from the original cast as well. And it really, really pissed me off. Like, I get it, okay, you have new actors added and you need to establish their characters. Some actors might even have screen times built into their contracts, fine, fair enough. But why develop it separately when it could have been easily integrated into the main plot? Like, okay, bear with me. So, let's say Neslihan is released from prison and she's trying to go back to her normal life. But she's noticed that her hands have developed tremors. She doesn't want to talk about it because she's trying to put up a strong front in front of her kids, but she really needs to verify it, but everyone's preventing her from going to the hospital, like they did essentially in the first episode. But, you know, the episode ends with Neslihan going to the hospital for the test and then finding out that it was sold to Sirhan essentially and that her kids were kicked out. Sorry if I'm a little lispy because I have a really bad cold. and it's just like messing up my pronunciation, so sorry about that. So where was it? Yeah, so she got kicked out of the hospital, and the other partner's the mafia lady with a grudge. Same plot, but you have the illness added to it. So here on, you can take it as the main plot, and you can have the mafia partners trying to wrestle control from Neslihan as she tries to keep her illness a secret, maybe. The family slowly starts to fall apart as everyone blames themselves and each other as well, because you know how the Soysalans are. And then they all come together and figure out like how to take back control, with some individual schemes backfiring on them too, because they can get up to pretty stupid shit sometimes. So not all of their plans have been foolproof. But the kicker can be some missing shares that everyone is trying to have a full control over the Soysan brands, but like they found out some shares were missing from the original like allotment to the kids. It can be like a secondary will left by Dede, the grandfather, that gives Alas and Jala some shares, after some time. So the grandfather didn't give up on the kids. He just wanted them to protect it from their father. So together with Neslihan's share, Yaman, Alas and Jala can race to sort of seize control as the baddies like try to override Neslihan's share by proving she's mentally unsound. Like, I'm not trying to write a different show. I swear to God, I'm not. Like, I'm literally just sitting here and pulling all the tropes together that I could find off the top of my head. Imagine like how good it could have been if the script writers, the professionals that were actually supposed to write it, did it. This way, you can preserve the original storyline, the original essence of what Yabani was, a family show. And you can still show the journey of that family who has come together after so many ups and downs. Like they're finally united, and now they're ready to face a new challenge, their mother's illness, and sort of how it brings changes into their lives. So you still have the Soysalan family in the center of it all, and you still have everything. Like, you still have that mafia plot going on in the background. It's just not the main theme of the season, because that's not what Yabani is. Even the Zafar plot was like wrapped up in 2 episodes, which was genuinely baffling since it was something that was teased so many episodes ago. But that is for another time, I guess. But yeah, even with the current storyline, the whole season, it felt really disjointed. Like, you had different parts that were essentially pieced together into an episode. But you can essentially take them apart, reshuffle them, and still create an episode. So it's not properly strung together, if I'm making any sense. So, and a lot of things, they weren't organic. Like, they were there just for the sake of it. Like, for example, episode 1, during Yaman's monologue when he didn't know where Asi was. He was fixing his bike, and then Asi calls him. And there's this whole conversation that he has with Alas. So in the beginning monologue, like when the episode started, there were so many monologues. In the beginning monologue, he said he didn't know where Asi was. She left. And he figures out that it had something to do between what happened, like between her and Alas. So he knows that. It's at the back of his mind. But then we see Yaman go at it with Alas about how he and Chesur can't see the sister because of Alas. Fair enough. It is partially his fault. Like, we know it's his fault, but Yaman doesn't know the whole story. So fair enough. But the next moment, it's all well. And we see him drag Alas to the couch and tell him how they've been abandoned. There's no love. Like, I had a whiplash because I was genuinely thought I missed a scene. Like, I must have missed a scene, because the next logical scene would have been Yaban going back to fixing his bike. Well, Alas goes and sits on the couch. And, a frustrated Yaman can go on about how he has been abandoned in the last times, and then but he wasn't. He was loved, and he still drove her away, because the whole "we've been abandoned" just did not make sense, especially from Yaman, since he had clearly an idea of why Asi left, and then to go on about. Biz terk oğlum. I really hope I'm pronouncing this right. Why is it we have been abandoned and not I have been abandoned? Because it's clearly his frustration over Ria leaving abruptly. Why is Asi and Allah's been included in this? I have no idea. And the first episodes in itself was actually really, it's a drag. It was a drag, genuinely drag, because I wasn't able to catch it when it actually aired. So I was watching it the next day. And the monologue started in the first 15 minutes. So instead of showing Neslihan's release, they could have started with the wedding cutscene from season 1, which I still, till date, have no idea why they didn't use it, because I was waiting for that scene to come on. And, we did see a wedding. We saw Neslihan's wedding, sort of, for a second. They should have kept that wedding as well, because they clearly had more scenes anyways. And I would always be grateful for Asi and Allah's dream wedding, because I was not expecting it, and it's a gift. I would accept it. But why not have that first season? Because that would actually paint such a good picture of how dreary it is. Because you wanted a happy ending, and what you're getting is clearly the opposite of it. And then you can just show Yaman monologuing his way to Güven's house, followed by a parallel of Neslihan's release as her kids get together, and so on. So that tight storytelling from season 1 really missed it, especially from the first 7 or so episodes, because they must have known that they had 14 episodes this season. 14 episodes was more than enough to tell the story, and they just wasted so much time on so little things. The first 2 episodes, they wasted so much time just establishing Iskandar and Hande and slow motioning the scenes when the endless flashbacks. I do not want to know the love story. I don't want to know about his unrequited love. That's not what I'm here for. And then we have superhero Yaman, who messes up more than he fixes. 80% of the things would not have happened if Yaman had just stayed still and not stepped in. And I'm not a Yaman hater, because this is something that season 1 Yaman would never. Because that boy was smart enough to beat Serhan at his own game. That street kid bested Serhan on his worst day. He literally fell off a cliff, and he still had the brain power to best Serhan. And over here, he's just screaming at everybody and just running around, messing things up. Not to mention everyone's inability to address that. Because, we did have Neslihan and Güven confront Yaman about how he's being reckless and telling him to stop before things get worse, but that's it. After all the mess that he's caused, that was all the repercussions that he faced. And then we had to see Yaman telling Alas about how he doesn't know what brotherhood is. That was literally just the tip of the iceberg for me, because Alas, for once, was actively trying to look out for Yaman and running around to undo his mess. And then we had this boy throwing these lines to his brother. Season 1, I would have eaten it up, because that boy deserved an oral beatdown. But this boy, this Alas, no. Especially not after everything that they've established. And Iskandar and Hande's imkansız aşk, they could have just shown us the aftermath of Asi's confession after she and Alas announced that they had a whole child. But they just cut to, and they instead showed us a slow motion of Hande and Iskandar reminiscing about their feelings to each other. Why am I being shown secondary characters that I have absolutely... I'm very sure 80% of the viewers would not care about them. If I'm wrong, genuinely if I'm wrong, put it out on my socials. I would love to hear from you. Were you watching it for Hande and Iskandar? Because I wasn't. clearly. And I actually thought there was some hope in Asi and Allah's storyline with the way the first 2 episodes played out, because you had a boy who was yearning for a girl that left him because of his own mess ups. Like, he fucked up badly. And I was seeing the potential of it. But I now realize the errors in my ways, because the entire season, Asi had less agency than she did as a street kid. And that's truly saying something, because, she was guilted and gaslit into accepting her family, who came out of nowhere, to the point of literally being held hostage by them. Like, you can't, are them going over her, like literally standing over her, forcing Asi to run away, was not a healthy acceptance. Not to mention being constantly judged by her own father in her own house, where she was supposed to feel safe. Like, okay, fine, they didn't understand her, but then the whole scene of her mother forcefully making Asi accept her. And if that wasn't enough, we had Alas, who, to offset his own guilt, literally bought a fake child for Asi. You know how messed up it is if the Pavillon people are literally telling Alas off over his actions. Like, it was genuinely messed up. And then that boy went and paid the Pavillon people to close the doors for a few days. So, here is Asi losing it at the door, and then there are her abusers enjoying the time off on Alas's dime. How does that make sense? And from what angle? Like, that is not unconditional love. That is not what Alas would do. That is not something... Alas Soy Salon would never do that. Like, he would make them pay. And then those guys just disappear. Like, they're nowhere to be found for the rest of the seasons. They face no consequences. Because that child could have survived had Asi been in better conditions. But she didn't. He didn't. That child died. And negligence was there, but nobody pays the price for it, because Alas just made them go away. And nobody ever talked about it. And then they upped the stakes by making Alas blame Asi for leaving him at their daughter's grave. And Asi's reaction to it? Don't shout in front of the child. Like, saying it out loud fills me with so much rage. And bullet wounds magically disappeared. People beaten within an inch of their lives are just fine enough to do a city tour in the same day. And because there was no consequences for anyone other than Asi, who lost her kid and still had to apologize for it, I just started losing hope for them as a couple in the season. And this is not an Allah's hate account. Like, I swear to God, I'm not here to bash Allah's, because despite whatever he did, he lost a child too. That boy, he literally was dreaming of a child, and he lost a child. But literally no one addressed it except for Serhan. And this scene was honestly so sad and so unnecessary, because A, it's more to sympathize with Serhan, who's been trying to redeem himself the whole season, and that's gross, because especially season 1 exists. His crimes were not washed off because of a little guilt that he showed towards his child, because he messed his life up in the first place. So, and second part, it essentially had no impact on anybody, especially Alas, because it was outside of the house and there was literally no one around. So who was he was consoling his child. Yes, very good, but it essentially gave Alas an out. I was waiting for this whole season for Alas to finally stand up on his own 2 feet, go out, work, do something. But it essentially opened a path for Lars to sort of take money from his father who messed up his life, essentially murdered a child, and by proxy murdered his sister. And he just accepted his money because, he had been pushed to that point where nobody but his estranged father was there for him. In that scene, it would have more sense had Neslihan, Güven, Chala, or even Yaman would have been around, because they are the people who actually mattered in Allah's life this season. I still remember from the first two episodes, from the second episode, when they went to the police station after finding out about Ruya, and Serhan was there, and they had to physically hold Allah's back from attacking his father. And then he was like, you've made me lose everything in my life. And I was like, yes, justified. Say it louder for the crowd behind me. And then over here, you have Alas accepting his father's money more than once, and for essentially building a grave for his child, a child that would not have died had Serhan not messed up his life to that extent. Because Serhan is clearly the linchpin of misfortune in this whole series. Like, he's the one who's holding together the string of misfortunes for everybody. And redeeming him in this way was disgusting, to say the least. And then, we had everybody judging Allah's for his actions when the people around him have done far worse things and faced far less consequences. And I don't even know where to start with Chala and her whole hate train with Allah's. But girl has literally pushed a person off a ledge to defend her father and just gotten off it scot-free. So, and then there was the potential of Hussein and his sons come back to marry Asi, which was wasted for shits and giggles. I am not kidding. And I'm not saying it for a jealousy plot. I'm saying it for a family building for Asi. At this point, we saw Asi's family more with Chala than with Asi herself. Like, you cannot tell me these things were planned way ahead and then scrapped mid-season, because they've laid the foundation. They did everything, and then magically one day it all just went up in smoke. And it wasn't even natural, like they were doing it because the character demanded or had to be there. It was so forced that at some point I was skipping all the scenes, because why am I seeing Chala being comforted by Asi's mother when Asi herself hasn't spent that much time with her? We could have seen Tuba and Asi get together, set the house on fire maybe, and then Adam sort of running to stabilize the situation, and then the siblings sort of reminiscing about all the times that they've missed. Because you're telling me in a season that has an episode averaging to 2 hours 15 minutes, you can't spare 5 minutes to a family that has finally reunited after so many years. And you're just wasting time. Like, Yaman and his never-ending saga of being present in everyone's storyline, but like not having his own. And I agree. This is partly because of his character setup and partly because of narrative choices that have been carried over from season 1. Because there was absolutely no reason for Yaman to get shot with Allah's leg. Because this was time for Allah's to finally, for once, have his family's undivided attention, and for Yaman to actually face the music for his actions throughout the season. This would have been a perfect opportunity for everybody to finally distance himself from Yaman, and for Yaman to finally realize that his actions have very real life consequences, and for him to stop being reckless, because he is clearly putting everyone's life in danger. But as always, they took the easy way out by making Yaman walk into the line of fire. That boy wasn't even trying to shield his brother. He straight up ran into the shooter's line of sight and, surprise, surprise, got shot. You can't make this up, because he was literally side by side with him, and he just ran blindly towards Allah's. And okay, Asi shooting the two guys was kind of cool, not gonna lie, but Was it worth it? No, it wasn't. Because that whole scene of like Arcee balancing two heads on her shoulder was cringy, and to be fair, not required. Like they could have skipped that scene. It's fine. It's fine. You could have skipped it. And then, yeah. Okay, back to the main point. So there was such an easy way out for everybody, because obviously you would forgive Yaman, who is on an operating table, losing his life, again, because of his own actions. And then that was sort of making him the hero again, because, he's trying to go out and save his brother, doing everything for his family, and because this is the consequences of his actions, but he's not allowed to face them since he's the main hero. I don't know what they were thinking when they were writing this. And then we have Iskander, Derin, and Hande, who are absolutely useless as characters, because you can replace them with any random mafia characters and the outcome would essentially be the same. Which is genuinely a shame, because halfway through the season, I was genuinely thinking that Iskander faked his own death, and he would at some point come back from the grave to take his revenge on Hande, and he'd go to the soy salons and make a deal with them. But him like actually being dead, like proper dead, just made the whole thing. Because he was supposed to be smart and clever, having ran Hande's Demirhan family business from like a very young age. But anyways, and then you had Güven, an experienced doctor, not even realizing that the bullet's entry wound was from the front and not from the back. Like Yaman shot via the back of the car. The entry wound should have been in his back, but they were in his chest from the front. And he is an experienced doctor. He has had enough surgeries to open up a patient and see where the bullet is coming from. And I was actually waiting for this epiphany, because Güven realizing that would have been such a big realization that Yaman is not the shooter. So half the things that he did to sort of exonerate Yaman wouldn't have been necessary, but like he would have really at that point trying to scheme to get his own tapes out of Hande's reach, or out of that lady's reach, rather than trying to save Yaman by keeping Iskander alive. But then I just realized that I've used way too much brain power for something that was probably just written for the heck of it. Like, sometimes I really hate Yabani. And I promise you, I'm not a rant channel. Like, I actually do have some good things to say about Yabani. But this is something that I really wanted to get off my chest. Like, I've probably not even scratched the surface. I promise you, if I start talking about it, there's so much more. But like, when you're rooting for something for so long, like, you get expectations, because I was on there on Twitter seeing everybody ask for a second season and actually posting about having a second season. And I was actually working, and I saw that article of Birsen like confirming a second season, and I was genuinely so happy, like, because it was something, it gave me a thrill the entire day. I was so happy, because you have been rooting for these characters for so long, and then you see them crumble, even when, there was a way out. Like, these are experienced scriptwriters who know what they're doing. Even with the tropiest of tropiest endings or like beginnings, you still had a story right there. Instead of putting together this haphazard season, like, I don't even want to call it a season, you had it right there and you messed it up, so it hurts. And this is essentially Yabani season 2, like your expectations crumbling under the weight of people who are not able to recognize them. Because from what I could see, only 2 writers were not there from the original season, which was Hilal Yildiz, the original creator, and then you had Melek, who was for script treatment. She wasn't there for the entire season, but she was there for a good chunk of it. And even removing them, you still had the original writers. You're telling me they couldn't contain the essence of a story that they've been writing for 36 episodes. Like, that's pretty shitty. And, I'm not sitting here expecting Yargi level writing or Kara Sevda or even Kuzgun level angst. But a little bit of logic would have been nice. But they literally wrapped Arcee's Pavillon storyline in a day. In a day. And I just realized that maybe it wasn't a good idea. And when Neslihan apologized to Serhan, I made peace with the fact that ending on season 2 was actually a good idea. And this is why I really didn't want to watch the final episode, because I knew they were going to pull some shit, and they did. And then they redeemed Serhan and they gave us that shoddy 2-second wedding, which really was not deserved. Like, you could have had that go on for multiple episodes while still dealing with other stuff. Like, that's how you plan a season, if you have limited number of episodes. And even when one episode being cut out due to the ban, you still had 2 episodes to go. You could have planned it properly, but you didn't. You choose to do it. It's a conscious decision. And it's really sad. Because I've really, like, this thing, and I'm really missing Yabani, because that's the sad part. Like, that's the whole reason why I'm actually sitting and talking about it, because I'm actually missing it. My pretty little budget show that had 0 sense, I'm actually missing it. And it's kind of sad, because you had such good actors, you had such good characters, the storyline was there, the setup was there. Like, you had something in your hands and you just messed it up so bad. It really makes your blood boil, doesn't it? And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. If I'm being out of line here, if a lot of things you don't agree with, I'm sorry. But that is something that I really feel about. And I would probably talk about Yabani at some point, like once I've calmed down a little bit and I go and rewatch the first season or the first few episodes of the second season. I would probably talk about Yabani again, because it's actually something that's very precious to me. Like, I started watching it when I wasn't really in a good phase of my life, and it was something that gave me hope. It was something that really made me look forward to my Tuesdays or Saturdays. And I really liked it. Like, I actually started learning Turkish just so, like, I could watch it live. And I didn't do that before. Like, even with Ashman, the Intikam, I kept up with, like, online translations on Twitter and sort of learned the language as much as I could. But over here, I actually put in the effort to do it. And seeing this ending just it really took me out, I guess. But I would at some point sit down and talk about it, because there's so many beautiful and nice things that, that is the charm of the show that we're actually missing because of all the shit that they've pulled. So yeah, this is the first episode of Talk About Drama, and genuinely drama. For now, I'm not actually watching any Turkish series because Hudutsuz Sevda, Kizil Goncalar, and Siyah Kalp, like, everything I started watching just ended up going to shit. So for now, I'm really just focusing on Korean shows. Love Scout is ongoing. Chinese Moonlight Mystic just ended. White Olive Tree just started. Thai Game of Love, I'm not watching it until it's ended. Like, it's really bad for my blood pressure. So I'm just letting it marinate until, like, it's ended, really, so I can sort of fast forward it. And then there are a couple of other dramas that are ongoing, just finished, or upcoming. So I would probably talk about them as well, because it's really just like drama. So if you would love to hear me talk about stuff, sometimes rant, sometimes fangirl over it, I would really love for you to come back to my channel, my podcasting channel. And yes, I would at some point talk about Yabani as well, because I do love it. It's bad. I'm genuinely attached to it in an unhealthy level, and I need to offload it off my chest before I can finally move on. So Yes, thank you so much for sticking around. It was not a very good first episode, I must admit, because starting your channel with a rant is not a good idea, but here we are. Here we are. So here's to good beginnings, and here's to a good January, I guess. Happy New Year to 2025. Let's go.